This week we're talking about social development, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about has come from Laura Burke's 2018 Exploring Lifespan Development book. As kids enter the school years, they're building on everything that's come before. When their earlier years have included support for those emerging abilities, they're much more likely to feel confident, in their ability. When they have teachers or homes where there's a lot of negativity toward them, they're more likely to feel unable to succeed. Kids in those early school years are likely to describe themselves in black and white terms, kind of demonstrating whether or not they feel capable. And kids after around age 8 or so might begin to describe themselves a little bit more fully and in more nuanced terms instead of black and white. They might talk about their personalities, their school skills, their friendship skills, their ability to get along with other kids. While preschoolers can compare their abilities to maybe just another person, older school age kids can compare themselves to a number of peers and then also in a number of different areas as well. By age 6 or 7, kids can reflect on their abilities in at least 4 categories, and those are academic, social, physical or athletic, and their physical appearance. They can combine these categories into that general feeling of self-esteem. And sadly, kids often place more value on their physical appearance than other factors, and not surprisingly, that can negatively impact their self-esteem. A lot of that has to do with the media expectations of perfection in our society. One thing about kids this age is that a lot of them are really excited about learning, and they learn well through exploring and discovering things much better than by rote memorization or having to do worksheet after worksheet. They often have a better understanding of the past, present, and future, and they're industrious. They like to work, and they enjoy the process of working. They're often competitive, and they want to win, and they can be poor sports when they lose. So having support to be better losers is helpful for them. Maybe talking about practicing so they get better, be empathetic as they talk about how they feel about losing and winning, and then ensure that they congratulate whoever won. Let them know that sometimes they lose due to chance, and then other times it's due to skill, and then talk about ways that they can improve their chances of winning. We can support their skills for calming down also, maybe taking deep breaths, counting to 10, doing belly breathing. And, for you as parents, you of course should remember that kids thrive on encouragement, not praise. Praise is when we say, "Oh, you're so good at this," or "You're a good boy." Encouragement is what we want to do instead. We want to say things like, "You worked hard on that. I enjoyed watching you stay with it, even when it was hard." This can help kids understand that the end product is not the important thing, but it's more that process of working hard or sticking with something over time. Kids this age can also be bossy and still get upset pretty easily. They might be afraid to make mistakes, and helping them see that making mistakes is just part of the learning process can be helpful for kids. 7 to 9-year-olds can be full of energy, and they might not always take the time to be neat. We can support them by making sure they get plenty of opportunities to get that energy out, and then help them maintain calm and patience as they work. Kids this age are typically more flexible when they're disappointed. They can handle it a lot better than when they were just a little bit younger. They often like to have things that they're in charge of, so it's a great opportunity for them to practice their responsibility skills. And then they also like to work cooperatively with others during this time period very often. And that's a great opportunity for them to develop those emerging social skills. Children in the school age years also have an increase in emotional understanding that comes about through increasing cognitive development as well as their ongoing social experiences, especially when they have adults who are sensitive to their feelings and who are willing to talk about feelings. These kids tend to become more empathetic toward others as well. By around age 10, school age kids typically use one of two strategies to cope with their emotions. One is problem centered, where they look at situations as changeable, they figure out what the problem is, and then they do something about it. And when that doesn't work, they very often will use emotion centered coping skills, where they use strategies to kind of try to keep themselves from getting too upset about not being able to change the outcome. Kids who have parents who ignore their feelings or who belittle their feelings, make fun of them, whatever it is, or just kind of dismiss their feelings are likely to develop poor emotion regulation, and they're less likely to have pro-social skills or to be empathetic. Kids continue to develop their moral reasoning throughout these early school years, and by around age 8, kids often see situations more flexibly. We talked about that before. Um, but in terms of moral development, they look at the intention and the context of the behavior to make a decision about it. So rather than seeing things as just completely black and white, right or wrong, they look at, was somebody trying to be mean? Were they doing this to solve a problem? And then that can influence how they see a situation. School age kids are typically better at resolving conflicts, and they find sharing and helping others easier to do than younger kids do. Physical aggression usually decreases during these years, but verbal and relational aggression can continue to happen. So, what we want to do is support kids in developing those pro social skills instead of being aggressive toward others, being a good friend. How can you be a good friend to somebody else? And what's the nice thing to do? What's the right thing to do in this situation? 8 to 10-year-olds might be more focused on fairness, and they can be pretty critical of themselves as well as of others. Kids' friendships, of course, continue to develop during the school age years, and they're usually based on liking each other, helping each other when their friend needs something. And over time, especially with those older school age kids, 8 to 11-year-olds, trust becomes really important. Girls usually have fewer friends than boys do, and they do things with a smaller number of friends, and boys usually have a little bit more friends. Very often, they will stick to their same gender as well in their friendships during these years. And by the time kids are 10 or 11 years old, they typically want to belong to a group. They might hang out with other kids based on like living near each other, being in the same classroom, going to the same church, or they might do it just by their similarity to other kids, maybe based on their gender, like I talked about before, maybe their ethnicity, their level of aggression or pro-social skills, and other things like that. Their peer groups usually have structure, they've got this social structure, they've got rules. So in this social structure, they have leaders and followers, and kids develop lots of social skills in these groups. They learn cooperation, leadership, loyalty to the group, how to follow others. And if a child gets kicked out of a group, It can be hard to join another one because they might be a little bit exclusive with their groups, and once they're formed, keep new kids from joining. And then if a child gets kicked out, if they've been mean to other kids because they were in this group, it might be hard for them to join another one. If a child already had social anxieties and they get kicked out of a group, they might decide not to take a chance by joining another group, and they might just stay alone, which can decrease their ability to get more experience with other peers. One thing that parents can do in this situation is to support kids by providing things like 4-H, maybe Boy Scouts, Girl Scout, church group, sport opportunities, volunteer opportunities in the community to help kids continue with their belonging to groups and developing their skills. Kids who are kind and empathetic toward their friends help each other build strong social skills. Kids who are in aggressive friendships, they tend to decrease their positive social skills. Um, Kids who have problems in their interactions with peers tend to have poor emotion regulation, and they're more likely to have parents who use insensitive and negative parenting practices. Some kids who have good athletic and social skills, but who cause trouble maybe at school or even with kids, and they defy authority or maybe use aggression or scare tactics to get people to do what they want, kind of being bullies. They might be popular in the early years of school, but they tend to become less popular over time. So if you have a child in this category, you might work hard at promoting their pro-social skills and ensuring they use other ways besides bullying to interact with their peers. Some kids are rejected by others, and that might be because they're aggressive or impulsive, they have lots of conflict, or they might be just passive and socially awkward. They might be just withdrawn. Notice these things that I'm saying. This can come back to a child's brain development and the way they have interacted with those close to them in their early years, which impacts how they interact with other people. And so, if a child is engaging in these behaviors, it's really important for parents and teachers to support their pro social activities and skill development so that they can have stronger friendships rather than begin to be rejected. Because when they start to get rejected, that can up the ante on their negative behavior. And then for kids who are withdrawn, they might just kind of fade into the woodwork. They may not participate very much in school. They tend to be very lonely. They don't do well in school, and they often don't want to go. And these kids may have very few friends. There are also kids who don't really engage with other kids very much. They're great with playing alone, and they enjoy just kind of playing by themselves. But when they decide to play with others, they often have really strong social skills, and they do just fine in those interactions. So that seems like it's more the child's choice. Introversion, there's nothing wrong with that. There are many people who are very quiet and don't need lots of social interaction. And when they do engage socially, they still do just fine. For kids who are having social difficulties, though, it's great to have coaching and modeling to reinforce their positive skills. And I would say that this is actually critical. And, this can also help them learn to interact with their peers, to cooperate when they play a game, and to respond appropriately to other kids. Adults should also reinforce their positive interactions and help other kids see them as likable. So that might be pointing out their positive characteristics, giving positive attention to this child, so that kids can see them in a different light. Parents often treat their male and female children differently, and they may be upset when their kids, especially their boys, cross their gender lines in the play. So if a boy plays with something that a parent sees as a girl toy, like maybe a doll, sometimes parents can get upset about that. It's really great for kids, though, to be able to experience the entire range of the spectrum of toy choices. And over time, they begin to choose typically ones that are closer to their gender. This is kind of a relief, but in general, school age kids tend to be easier to parent, especially when their parents have used high warmth and high expectation discipline strategies with them. Kids that in these school age years also begin to use more logical thinking, and kids who have better relationships with their parents tend to have better self-regulation skills, and they often go to their parents when they're experiencing issues. We see conflict increasing between siblings during the school years especially when kids have parents who compare them a lot, because kids react intensely when they feel like their parents prefer another child over them. And this is especially true if they think that about their dads. But, kids also rely on each other for companionship and support, especially when their parents encourage them to be close with each other. If by chance kids experience divorce or separation during these years, parents can help them have better outcomes by keeping them away from the conflict between the two parents, keep predictability and routines for kids, explain the divorce in simple terms, and help them understand what to expect. Let them know that both parents still love the kids very much, but there are just some challenges in the relationship that they can't work out. Let them know that divorce is forever, that they're not going to get back together. And as you're doing this, you want to empathize with kids' feelings, listen to them, and acknowledge how hard it is for kids because they're losing one of the two most important people in their lives very often. Or, this is how kids very often see it. We want to still use our authoritative parenting practice, or parenting strategies. So, affectionate interactions, accepting our kids, having reasonable expectations, and consistent and appropriate discipline. So, kids know what to expect. And we want to encourage the relationship with both parents so that we can support that child's ongoing development.